Worship leaders, worship musicians, and those who love to worship. Should you use slang in a worship song? Well, let's talk about it. Welcome to the Worship Homestead. My name is Nathan Smith. Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about slang in worship songs. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What even is slang? Well, I'm going to cast a pretty broad net in today's video, but before we get to that, I want to give you something. If you go to my website, blueprintsounds.com, you can get access to my free worship booster pack. It has PDF manuals and online classes in everything from songwriting, how to arrange your band, how to do church sound, 25 chart-topping arrangement tricks for your band. All of that is bundled together for free if you go to my website or click on the link nearby, blueprintsounds.com/worship booster pack. All right, let's talk about slang in church. Every culture and every generation has one, and each generation has no idea where the younger generation got it from. I'm 37, so I'm probably at the one edge of the millennial group, and Gen Z slang doesn't make any sense to me, but here's a couple of them for you. So Riz, the word Riz, which is actually, I found out, short for charisma. So when someone has Riz, they are good. I don't know, whatever. How about another one? How about slay? Slay is when something's good. Again, a lot of these things are when something's good. Oh, his new car is totally slay, meaning it's impressive. Or when something's not good, you'll hear Gen Z say that it's sus, which is short for suspect. Okay, these are all examples of slang terminology. The question is, should you use slang in a worship song? Most of us can probably feel that the answer is no, but why? Let me explain, and then I want to cast a little bit broader net and not only train my fire on Gen Z, but some broader parts of the Christian circle as well. Here's what using slang does. Slang creates an in-group and an out-group. So when a group of kids use those terminology, those words like Riz or slay or whatever, the point is that grandma doesn't get it, right? Grandma's not supposed to get it. And if she should try and use it in a sentence, it's going to sound weird because that's not in her in-group. The whole point of using slang is that your friends understand it. There's another one of those slang terms, if you know, you know. Your group gets it, and that's how your group gets solidified. It's not only by the people that you let into your group, it's the people that you exclude from your group that makes it something special. Another example of this is drag racing culture. I know nothing about drag racing culture, so I had to look up some of their terminology. Here's what I found. Did you know what a Christmas tree is? I didn't. I thought a Christmas tree was, for December 25th. Turns out the Christmas tree is those set of lights that they put in between the two dragsters that go beep, 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 and then it glows, green and red. That's a Christmas tree. Didn't know that. Do you know what a digger is? Nope. A digger is another word for dragster, a drag car. Okay. Do you know what hides are? Hides are another word for tires. Like, oh, he was smoking the hides. Apparently, those are tires. I didn't know any of those terminology. I had to look up all those words. If I wanted to be in the in-group, if I wanted to, suddenly got the bug for drag racing, I would have to read the magazines, I would have to go to the events, I would start dressing differently. And in my conversations with other guys who did drag racing, I probably would need to pick up that terminology if I wanted to feel like I was in the in crowd. Here's the point, and here's the thing about church. When we gather together to worship God and we gather together to sing, I hope that it is the most corporate part of your church service. Oftentimes, even if there's a children's service, we tend to have everybody together for worship, and then the pastor will come up and say, all right, now the young kids can go off to children's church, whatever. It's the part of the service where all three generations gather together. Well, what you're saying is if you say, oh, I want to put slang in my worship songs, so I can speak to the younger generation, you're purposefully saying that I don't know how to, or I don't choose to talk to more than one generation at a time, right? It may mean that you're like, I only want to talk to young kids at the exclusion of everybody else, or one of the older generations, or I don't have the skills to be able to talk to more than one generation at a time. And this isn't only a young person's thing, even though the slang is so weird and new with the younger generations that we notice it. It also happens with older generations. And let me explain. There is theological jargon just as much as there is Gen Z jargon. So, for example, I wrote a couple down. Exegesis. You know what exegesis means? You probably wouldn't want to use it in your next sermon because then you're going to have to explain to everybody and then it sounds like you're talking down to them. Or how about this one? Imputation. You know what it means to impute something or that God imputes his righteousness? Theologians love these kind of words because they're very specific and they're very particular. However, it also means that they get it. If you know, you know. They're talking to their peer group. They're talking to other thinkers. They're talking to other academics. So they use those words so that it shows that they, quote unquote, get it. Here's another one that is just a pet peeve of mine. Using Latin phrases when an English phrase would do. Here's a Latin phrase, imago Dei. What does that actually mean in English? It means in the image of God. And yet for some reason, theologians and even pastors that have been reading a lot of theology books in their sermons will say we are imago Dei. So they'll reference the Latin phrase, which we don't use anymore, when they could have just said we are made in the image of God. Again, you're making an in-group, you're making an out-group. Either you get it or you don't get it. The same is true of worship today, but not with slang, with making it sound old and traditional. So there's a movement now of writing modern day hymns. And I love hymns and I understand why people are doing it. The idea is that, all of the new songs are shallow and there's no meaning. We need more meat. We need more theological, resonance to this song. So we're going to make them sound like they did in the 1800s. Well, one of the ways that you can do that is by using passive voice. And here's what that means. If I was to take a simple sentence like, Jesus loves me, that is structured in a way that makes sense in English. We have Jesus, the subject, loves, the verb, me, the direct object. Jesus loves me. A hymn writer, a modern day hymn writer, would take that and say, I am held fast in the love of Jesus. You can see how your eyebrows raise and how it feels like it's high rhetoric. But what you did was you flipped it, right? I, the direct object, is now at the front of the sentence, and then am held, that's the passive voice, by the love of Jesus. All right, so now we've even further removed Jesus from the picture. He should have been at the beginning of the sentence, and now he's at the end of the sentence. It's little things like that that make us sound more impressive. It's only for our peer group. It's not for everybody. If you were trying to speak to 3 generations at once and you wanted to get your point across and do it quickly, you would say, Jesus loves me. And if you needed one more good reason why you should keep it simple in your songs and in your sermons, it's because that's what Jesus did. I'm going to read out of Luke chapter 6. We're starting in verse 43. No good tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. People do not pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars. The good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and the evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For out of the overflow of his heart, his mouth speaks. There's a couple of things that we can learn from that passage. The first is that Jesus didn't let how he was saying something get in the way of what he was saying. He wanted to be understood, so he kept his words short and simple. They're also visual. That means that even a kid can understand what a fruit tree looks like, and that good fruit comes from good trees and bad fruit comes from bad trees. But that can easily be understood by a parent, and that can easily be understood by a grandparent. That's the point. Jesus, when he was speaking to the crowds, was speaking to 3 generations at a time, and he wanted to be understood by 3 generations at a time. He didn't pick his peer group, he spoke to everyone. We should want to be like Jesus in the way that we communicate. Simple, to the point, and yet can be understood by 3 generations at a time. Hey, I hope that video helps you. And again, if you need help with your worship team, go to my website, blueprintsounds.com/worship booster pack. Until next week, God bless and goodbye.